Hello, I'm Isabel Fay. I'm in the Department of Communication Studies, and I'm also CAFE faculty consultant for speech pedagogy. And today I'm here to share an activity that I find particularly valuable to do with online students early in the semester. The purpose of that activity is that students get to know each other early on and that they feel comfortable speaking up in an online environment, which we all know has been a challenge already in the fall semester. So I'm going to share my screen with you and walk you through a couple of ideas. So yes, we all know these challenges, right? How do we build classroom community? How do we get students interested in our content that might still be okay early in the semester, but we all know it lags, and especially in online platforms, it's difficult. Classroom decorum through Zoom, ... We know attention span is a challenge for students, lots of distractions, and about ourselves. It feels like sometimes an uphill battle. And so instructor burnout is real, as also has been shown in the survey, in the faculty needs survey that CAFE has circulated a couple of weeks ago. So what I'm here to propose is that you use speech in your classrooms more, and not just thinking of speech as a public speaking exercise, but really using speech more as a means to an end, speech as a pedagogy, and finding the value in getting students to speak up, one, for building community, right, and interaction. But you can also use speech pedagogy to foster comprehension and retention of course content, by getting students to reiterate and explain to each other certain kinds of ideas, theories, content, and so forth. You can use speech pedagogy in a way to foster civic engagement, civic expression, critical thinking, expressing their opinions, developing their opinions, listening to other people's opinions, right? So it's persuasive mode. And finally, performative as well, to get students to foster their professional performance and presentation skills. So today, obviously, not every speech activity will be able to serve all of these ends. The activity that I'm proposing today is especially keys in on interaction and performance. So the activity that I'm sharing is designed to build community in the classroom early on, to build student connection, as well as get students to train their professional presentation skills in an online platform or through online digital technology. I have shamelessly called this exercise, you might have noticed. This title plays on the idea that when we are on Zoom and we sit and follow the class, that our backgrounds, what we see, what is visible behind us, becomes part of our persona, and that people are actually quite interested to see what people expose, or sometimes willingly, sometimes, and most of the times not so deliberately. And so this activity is supposed to get students to, as I said, build classroom community, so that interactive level, but also to start getting them to think more critically about how they present themselves online and be more mindful about the scenery, right? What kind of background, what kind of setting they choose, and also to maintain some control over what that setting actually means and use it as an opportunity to introduce themselves to other students, right? So that's where that building community comes in. So as I said, this activity is designed for online students, which it can be used for full online courses, but it also can be used in hybrid and high flex courses, depending on what you're doing. And obviously best to be used at the beginning of the semester, but if you wanted to mid-semester kind of get people to start thinking more carefully about how they present themselves on Zoom, this could maybe also be an activity to do a couple of weeks into the semester. So the activity works as a short introduction speech. It's an extemporaneous speech, which means that it's not completely improvised. You give the assignment a couple of days before students actually give the short speeches, 1 to 2 minute speech. Students are supposed to not fully memorize it. They're also not supposed to, come up with something on the spot. This is actually important also for this activity because you don't want students to spontaneously talk about their background. You want to give them the chance to have some control over their setting. So it is important that you give the assignment a couple of days early so as to not kind of invade on their personal space. And so yes, students then are supposed to pick deliberately one prop from their personal background and highlight that as part of, to kind of introduce themselves to the class. So they pick a prop and use it to tell other students about themselves by explaining what that prop means to them, what role it plays in their lives, and why it is important to them. The benefits in my mind are that when students use a prop to tell a story about themselves, or kind of to explain a certain kind of experience and what it means to them, when students use a prop and tell stories, it tends to be more memorable to other students. So they can introduce themselves and other students will remember for longer who they are. It also gets students, especially in an online platform, oftentimes students get too comfortable and passive. So hopefully it gets students to early on push them beyond their comfort zone to start speaking up despite there being a computer, right? Despite them being in their personal dormitory. So it gets them used to speaking up despite these challenges. And hopefully students will make connections with each other, right? They might see similarities or at least become interested in what another person has to say. And it kind of takes advantage of the fact that some of us are probably anyways curious, why are people using this poster, or why are people using this stuffed animal, or having, why is that in the background anyway? So it kind of takes advantage of that to actually give students a chance to deliberately use that prop to introduce themselves. And as I said, this is also supposed to give students the chance to develop a little bit more of a conscientiousness about what they are exposing and what they're making visible about themselves, and learning that their setting and their background is part of their overall image and part of their message. When they speak up, a lot of the times in class, we listen to them, but we also see what is visible on their screen. So we get students to think more carefully about those things. So I would use this as a low stakes assignment. I probably would give students A or B if they just meet all of the assignments, that they abide roughly by the time constraints. If they might have a very creative way of involving a prop and making themselves really stand out and memorable, that would probably push it into A level. Other than that, if they tell a story and use a prop and abide by the time constraints, it would probably fall immediately into B level. I would encourage you also, of course, to use every opportunity to get students to practice their public speaking. And as I said, performance is part of this activity. So getting them to use eye contact through the camera, and also, since this is part of the assignment, to use a somewhat professional background to introduce themselves, that would also play into the rubric. So I hope you found this activity at least inspiring to maybe have your own similar ideas. You can use it, you can modify it, obviously. Hopefully it sparks some ideas, and of course, you feel free to completely adopt it as well. I hope this was helpful. Thank you for your attention.